So the reason they won't pay for his ongoing security when he visits the UK is because they want him dead, Dan.
I know, this is now paranoia and delusion on an actual terrifying scale.
Prince Harry just went on the BBC and dropped a line that stopped people cold. Because in the same interview where he talks about wanting reconciliation, he also strongly implies something much darker. Not just that he feels unsafe, but that certain people want history to repeat itself. And if you know what that phrase is pointing to, you understand why critics are calling this a shocking new low. Quickly hit subscribe, because once you hear how this all fits together, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Why ask for peace, while hinting they want you gone?
He also went as far to suggest that the royal family actually wanted him dead. On the one hand, he's saying, I want reconciliation. I want to have a relationship with my brother again, even though he never wants to speak to me again. I want to speak to my dad again. Yeah, he's probably dying, so I feel a little bit bad about that. Then, in the same breath, he's saying, these guys want me to be unsafe.
So let's slow down and put the moment in context, because this is where the whole thing becomes more than just a security dispute. Harry is talking about the ongoing fight over security when he visits the UK and why he doesn't believe he's been treated the same way as others. He points to what he calls the disclosure process and says that through it, he's learned things that made him feel darker about the situation. Then he drops the line that became the headline. He says he's discovered that some people want history to repeat itself.
So I've discovered that some people want history to repeat itself, which is pretty dark.
That's quite a statement. Who do you think that is?
I'm not going to share it at this point. You know, I know all the names of the people that were involved in this process, and again, you know, you have to question, why wasn't I put through the same risk management board that everybody else was put through?
That phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because he doesn't say, I'm scared. He doesn't say, I feel unsafe. He says something closer to, I've seen enough to believe there are people involved who want the worst outcome, and the way he says it matters. He frames it like he now knows who was involved in the process, who made decisions, and why he believes he wasn't handled through the same risk management board route as everyone else. But then comes the part that makes it even more combustible. When asked who he thinks wants history to repeat itself, he refuses to share. He says he's not going to share at this point. So it becomes this half accusation that lands like a full accusation. Because now the audience is stuck with a statement that sounds extreme, but has no names attached, which means the public is forced to interpret it. And that's exactly why the backlash hits so fast. Because critics immediately say, if you're going to suggest something this serious, either show what you've discovered or stop hinting at it like it's a threat hanging in the air. And the reason it spreads is simple. History repeating itself is not a normal phrase to use in a normal dispute. It's not, I feel unsupported. It's not, I disagree with policy. It's a loaded implication that drags the most painful comparison possible into the conversation, which is why the reaction isn't calm debate. It's shock. Because people hear that and think, is he saying they want him harmed? Is he saying they're fine with an accident? Is he suggesting something intentional? And even if he doesn't spell it out, he knows what people will connect it to. That's why critics call it reckless. Because once you put that suggestion out there, you can't control what it becomes. And then, right after raising the stakes to that level, he pivots back to reconciliation.
Why would he want to reconcile with people who literally want him dead? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And so it isn't true. That's basically the rule.
And as for reconciliation, my sources very close to Prince William say that his words were, over my dead body. It's done. It's over.
Now here's where the logic starts collapsing in real time. Harry says he wants reconciliation. He wants his family back. He wants contact. He wants the door open. But then, almost in the same breath, he drops a line that implies certain people want him put in harm's way, with history repeating itself, hanging over it like a threat. And critics immediately go, you can't hold both positions at once. Because reconciliation is built on one basic ingredient, trust. If you're genuinely convinced someone wants you unsafe, the normal human response isn't, let's rebuild our relationship. It's, I need distance. It's, I need protection. It's, I need boundaries. So commentators frame it as either he doesn't truly believe it, and he's using it to pressure the system publicly, or he does believe it, and then reconciliation talk becomes emotionally incoherent. And that's why this moment hits harder than the usual headlines. It's not just Harry says X. It's the whiplash. 1 minute, please let me back in. Next minute, some people want history to repeat itself. That doesn't read like a peace offering. It reads like a bomb tossed into the room, then asking everyone to sit down for tea. And it makes viewers ask the uncomfortable question. Is this a genuine attempt at healing, or a strategy to win the public fight by raising the stakes as high as possible? Because when you invoke history repeating, you're not debating paperwork anymore. You're pulling the most emotionally loaded lever you can possibly pull.
There were red lines, Harry crossed them, and the fact that he is now trying to suggest that the royal family actually want him to die like Diana, well, it's just another step too far. Like, why on earth would they reconcile at the same time as he's putting out actually arguably the most crazy and explosive accusation yet?
Yes.
This is where the commentary turns brutal, because critics argue he's not just complaining about security. They say he's implying something much bigger, that the system is deliberately keeping him exposed, that certain people prefer him vulnerable, and that the risk management process is being used as cover. And what makes it explode is that he doesn't name names. He hints that he knows the names, he knows who was involved, he's seen things through disclosure, but he refuses to say who. That creates the perfect storm. If he names someone, he has to back it up. If he doesn't name someone, the public fills in the blanks. So the accusation becomes this fog that hangs over everyone. Who is he talking about? The palace? Government? Advisors? Courtiers? Security officials? Some people? And then comes the psychological piece critics keep repeating. They claim the argument becomes circular. Why don't I get security? Because there's a process. Why wasn't I treated the same in the process? Because your status changed. So why won't they pay? Because some people want history to repeat itself. That's why commentators call it paranoia level, because it jumps from procedure, intent, conspiracy. And once the audience hears history repeating, it stops being about tax-funded protection and turns into a moral accusation. You're not just denying me security, you're fine with what could happen. That's an extremely serious implication. And critics argue that if you're going to go that far publicly, you can't then act surprised when the relationship is permanently damaged.
The problem is Harry is now so isolated. He has ignored so many people for so long. There's only one person who advises him, his wife. And she only cares about trying to protect her own reputation. So all of this is crazy, but the idea that he thinks there is a way back by giving another interview is what's nuts.
Then he pivots into a softer, emotional angle, almost like a reset. He says he can't see a world where he brings his wife and kids back to the UK right now. He says he loves his country, always has. He misses the UK, misses parts of it. And he calls it sad that his kids might not really know his homeland. On paper, that sounds like homesickness, like grief, like something relatable. But critics say the phrasing gives away the resentment underneath. I love my country, despite what some people in that country have done. That's not neutral. That's a line that suggests betrayal. So viewers are watching him do two things at once, trying to sound warm and nostalgic, while still implying he's been targeted, mistreated, set up, harmed. And the result is this emotional mix that can feel manipulative to some people. You should feel sorry for me because I miss home, but also you should be angry because something dark was done to me. And that's why this segment keeps getting replayed. Because it's not just, I miss home. It's, I miss home, but home did something to me. And when you're talking about reconciliation, that's a major problem, because reconciliation requires acknowledging complexity, not framing yourself as the only injured party every single time. So critics argue this isn't closure. It's a loop. Now we get to the part commentators love because it's decisive and dramatic. William. The claim goes like this. William doesn't want a relationship. There were red lines. Harry crossed them. And it's finished. Whether every source is accurate or not, the public logic is what matters here. Because from the outside, it looks like Harry keeps escalating publicly. Books, documentaries, interviews, fresh accusations, new implications, and then still says, reconciliation. Critics argue William would see that as impossible to work with. Because even if you reconcile privately, the fear is always, will the next disagreement become the next headline? Will the next argument become the next interview? Will private conversations become content? And this history-repeating implication makes that fear worse, because it's not a small grievance. It's the kind of allegation that, once spoken, permanently changes how people see your intentions. So critics claim William's stance would be simple. Not anger. Not emotion. Just finality. Because if someone publicly implies you want them dead, directly or indirectly, how do you ever sit across from them again and pretend that didn't happen? That's why this moment is framed as a point of no return. Not because it's loud, but because it's structurally unrecoverable. Then there's the other side, Charles. Commentators often argue Charles is different from William for one reason: guilt. They say Charles carries guilt about the chaos of Harry's upbringing, the public war, the breakdown of the marriage, the pressure cooker of royal life, the tragedy that followed. So even if Charles is angry, some believe he still has that parental instinct to keep a door cracked open. But here's the issue critics raise. Even if Charles had any emotional openness left, this kind of interview makes it harder. Because it's not just another complaint. It's not just, "I'm misunderstood." It's an implication that people involved in the system wanted a dangerous outcome. So the argument becomes, if Charles reaches out, it looks like he's validating it. If Charles stays silent, Harry can frame the silence as confirmation. If Charles pushes back, it becomes war again. It's a trap with no clean exit. And that's why critics say the BBC interview sends everything back to square one. Because any fragile progress behind the scenes, any quiet conversations, any softening, gets erased when a statement like "history repeating itself" is broadcast to millions. So you end up with the same pattern. Harry speaks. The stakes rise. The distance grows. Then he says he wants reconciliation again. And viewers are left wondering whether reconciliation is a real goal, or just a word he uses to make his accusations sound more reasonable. Now I want your take. Was this a cry for help or a calculated accusation? Comment your answer below and subscribe because the next interview is going to trigger even more fallout.